I'm Tasha A.F. Lemley, and this is Nashville. This Thursday, Harold Wayne Nichols is scheduled to be executed for the 1988 rape and murder of 21-year-old Karen Pulley. If the execution goes through as planned, it will be Tennessee's third execution this year. Today's guests talk openly about suicide, sexual assault, and murder, including victims who were children. Please feel free to stop and come back to this episode later if you need to. So, on the days when someone is executed at Riverbend Maximum Security Institution in Nashville, community members are generally allowed to gather outside the prison in a large field. Separated by fences and distance are the against and for sides. The against, they're usually made up of a few dozen clergy and abolitionists, including one of our guests today. They meet to pray and sit in silent vigil for victims of crime and the man about to die for those crimes. Now, the for side tends to be much slimmer. Sometimes there's a small handful of victims, friends, and family members. But sometimes there's just one man, our other guest, Rick Lottie. He's tall, mustached, and wears a cowboy hat with a taxidermied rattlesnake wrapped around it. I've heard plenty of people talk about him over the years. I've heard people on the against side wonder out loud about his motivations showing up for so many executions, and that's about 10 since 2009. And I've heard very kind folks curse him under their breath. The first thing he tells me when I meet him this August is, "Today we're going to wipe the smile off Byron Black's face." That's the man being put to death that day. But then we keep talking, and the conversation winds around and gets more complex. It becomes clear he cannot stand violence against children. Then as he's leaving, Rick meets a chaplain to death row, Reverend Tim Holton. They shake hands and hear just a little of each other's stories. Both were interested in more, so I invited them to WPLN. These men start talking before they even sit down, and they keep going for 3 hours. Rick begins with an apology for once playing AC/DC's Hell's Bells outside the prison.
I forget which television station it was, and they were talking about Billy Ray Irick, about how he was the victim, and said next to nothing about Paula Dyer. And I snapped, and I'm sorry. And I got my wife's boombox that long and that big around. I get out there. We go through security. Here comes the media, asks me about Billy Ray Irick. And I said, Billy Ray Irick raped Paula Dyer and then strangled her until the blood vessels in her eyes bursts. I turned my head. I looked back and I said, and that deserves an execution. I hope his family claims his body. I hope they have him cremated, and I hope they throw his ashes in a landfill. And there's a light shining at me. There were people behind that camera. Somebody said, "Oh my God." And I said, "What are we supposed to do with him? Y'all have made a big deal about Billy Ray Irick and said next to nothing about Paula Dyer." I said, "You see this right here? At the moment of my choosing, I'm going to play Hell's Bells. Maybe y'all need to be a little bit more responsible if you're going to be a journalist."
During the course of Rick's conversation with Reverend Tim Holton, they learn their lives have a lot in common, particularly around the childhood trauma they experienced. This organically turned into a conversation between them, and not an interview by me. So you're not going to hear from me a lot after this. I'm along for the ride with you, and grateful to be in the room. Let's start with Reverend Holton.
These were my cousins, Stephen, Brent, Eric, and Kayla.
Beautiful.
And their father, Daryl Holton, my cousin, shot them execution style. I was 17 years old.
And a pallbearer.
Yes, I was.
And that's something that you should never have to have gone through.
You're absolutely right. And I know from my experience, like, you're sold a bill of goods. Like, we were told when Daryl is executed, it's going to get better. You're going to get closure. You're going to start to heal. And Daryl was a death row volunteer. He waived all unnecessary appeals. It was 10 years. And it made things worse. Because now, I'll speak for myself. Daryl dying in the electric chair, Stephen, Eric, Brent, and Kayla are still dead. They still died the way they died. Daryl is now dead too. And nothing has changed. It wasn't justice. It didn't make it better.
I'll tell you what, you were the first person I've met who lost family members through a murder.
Yeah.
When I look at premeditated murder, it's like taking a rock and you throw it into a pond where the pond has no waves and it's flat. And you throw a rock into that pond, it creates a ripple.
Mm-hmm.
And when somebody commits a premeditated first-degree murder, it's going to affect so many people who knew that person.
Yeah.
Cecil Johnson,
Mm-hmm.
Oscar Smith,
Mm-hmm.
Byron Black,
Mm-hmm.
all murdered a child in Davidson County with a revolver.
Yeah.
Intentionally.
Yeah.
Those were the three that I was interested in.
Yeah.
And that child saw it coming.
Yeah.
Much like in my ordeal, if I may go there,
Yeah.
my father was a fence jumper.
Mm-hmm.
It was no big deal for me to be sitting there on the couch watching the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner show, and there goes a coffee cup flying over my head,
Yeah.
aimed at my father.
Yeah.
And the issue was, why do I smell perfume that I don't wear?
Yeah. Yeah.
So my stepmother, Christmas Eve, 1971, I was 8 years old. My sister was 11. My brother was 14. 2 a.m. we heard a blood-curdling scream. We ran downstairs. We were standing in front of the Christmas tree. And she was there standing there with his Colt .45 revolver.
Mm-hmm.
And she had walked up to me, and we were about as close from me to you, but not even 3 feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she said, your father has moved in with his secretary and he's not coming back for anybody. And I'm going to give him a Christmas present he will never forget. And she raised that Colt .45 and pulled the trigger. Click. She pulled it again, click. Pulled it again, click. She went to the bedroom, got a box of bullets, came back, sat at the kitchen table, and tried to release the cylinder. If you know anything about firearms,
Oh, yeah.
they're all the same. All revolvers are the same.
Yep.
Doesn't matter what caliber it is.
Yep. They all work the same. Yeah.
Right. And she could not get that cylinder to open. And it's so easy.
Yeah.
And that is when I was absolutely, positively, 100% convinced there's guardian angels.
Yeah.
And you could say what you want to say, and you could say what you want to say. A guardian angel was keeping that cylinder from opening.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And she gave up. My stepmother knew he moved in with the secretary, but didn't know where.
Mm-hmm.
So she hired a private investigator. She found him.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets a knock on his door.
Mm-hmm.
And my stepmother has me, my sister, and my brothers on that porch. And she said, here, take your kids. Turned around and walked away. So we spent the night at his apartment. The next day, he puts us in a car and drives us to our biological mother's house.
Mm-hmm.
She had remarried a Southern Baptist minister whose sermons were broadcast on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
He had 3 kids of his own, a day I'll never forget. It was a day that he looked at my mother. We'd only been there for 2 weeks. He looked at her and said, I married you to raise my kids. Your kids have to go. And he put us in a car. He drove us to Richland Village, 51st and Charlotte. They finally tore that place down. A lot of kids got their heart broken there. Mine happened on April Fool's Day, that Saturday when I got dropped off there like a dog, along with my brother and sister. No cards, no phone calls, no visits, no presents, no nothing. See, as I grew up, I went to 11 different schools. My fourth grade math teacher, she found out that I lived in an orphanage and I was legally the property of the state of Tennessee and my brother and sister. So she said, you know, me and my husband can't have any kids. The last time my brother, my sister, and myself ever sat at the same table together or were in the same building together was January 25th, 1972. The very next day, I was going to be going home with her and meet her husband. They taught me things real quick. There is nothing you can do or say that would ever impress me. And when I was 17, my adopted father took me on the front porch and said these words that are forever burned in my brain. We'd been to the family lawyer. You can now consider to be an emancipating juvenile, which means you can do whatever you want. You're not a part of this family. You never have been. You never will be. And we would like you to leave today.
Yeah. The system failed you. The system failed you.
It fails a lot of people.
It still fails a lot of people. The things I've experienced in my life, we try to convince ourselves, well, it made us stronger. It prepared us for something else. No, I don't think it did. It taught me how to survive, but as a kid, I shouldn't have to have been taught how to survive. As a kid, you should not have had to have been taught how to survive. We should have been able to be kids. We should have been able to enjoy our childhoods. We should not have dealt with any of this.
Sure.
To talk to people and they're like, when you said you don't know anyone personally that's been murdered like this, I'm glad. I'm glad the statistic is so low on that because, and it shocked me. I just saw it a couple of weeks ago. The percentage of people who have been directly impacted by murder was way lower than I anticipated. And that's just because it's all I've ever known. I've not known anything different. I've not known anything different other than my cousins and what Daryl did wasn't even the first time it's happened in our family. It's a long line. We go to, my grandfather's brother, tried to kill his entire family and then take his own life in Chapel Hill, Tennessee. And that was 60s to 70s. Go back a few generations and you can't trace the Holton line. It's because one of my great-grandfathers, when he was like 13 or 14, he killed his father with an axe and the record ends. This I don't know if it's genetic memory, mental illness, a lot of things that aren't addressed. And, I know with my dad, my dad suffered depression and battled bipolar and honestly was probably on the autism spectrum. But because he was a man, we don't get help because he's tough and he can handle it. And where, me, I see a trauma therapist every other week and have for the last few years. And it gave me new life.
Thank God. Amen.
Yeah. I needed help because the things I experienced from my earliest memories, no one, particularly a child, should have to go through. And I say that I can understand a lot of what you're saying, a lot of your experiences. I can more than say I'm sorry. I'm sorry because.
Sure. Thank you.
I get it.
Thank you. I am 62. My sister is 65, and my brother is 68.
Mm-hmm.
I am so sorry that your family has gone through what they've gone through that you just expressed. We shut the family bloodline down. None of us have any kids. Deliberately.
Yeah.
We made it clear to them when they abandoned us, when y'all get to your golden ages, you're not going to have no grandkids. We're shutting the family bloodline down right now.
Yeah.
So I don't have no kids.
I don't either.
My sister doesn't have any kids, and my brother doesn't have any kids.
Yeah.
We shut it down.
Yeah. My family has no relationship with me. They live 30 minutes away from me, and my brothers have kids. I do not. I made the decision in my teenage years. I will have no offspring.
Well, my father, who was now 65 years old, married to a woman who is 6 years older than me,
Mm-hmm.
which would have been his third mistress. $100,000 in debt. The only person putting food on the table. Took a revolver, put it to his heart, and blew his heart out. And his wife had him buried within 24 hours. Put him in a pine box.
Immediate burial. Yeah.
And did not tell anybody.
Right.
And when I learned what had happened, the first thing I did was I went to the liquor store. I bought a bottle of Dom Perignon champagne and a big bag of ice. I chilled it for about 2 hours, and then I drank every drop of it.
Yeah.
And you know what? When I learned that he was dead, it was like the whole world had been lifted off my shoulders.
Yeah. Every Christmas, my dad's health would take a downturn. So by the time my dad was my age, I'm 45, he had already had open heart surgery. He had a dozen or more stents that had been placed. My dad didn't take care of his body. And it's, I'm learning the older you get, the more that starts to show. So my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer a few years before he died. And every Christmas it would be his health has downturned. So when I got the call from a cousin telling me, his health has downturned, I thought, it's Christmas. Here we are. The next day I get a call that from my middle brother and then my mother that he had died. And nearly 14 hours had passed at that point. And it hurt, but then it was also kind of a reaffirmation of the reality that I don't have a place in that family. I like to be able to predict and have a plan before anything happens, which is a trauma response. But so my therapist made me make a deal with myself that I didn't have to make any decisions when my dad died until it happened. So I just went with it, and going to his funeral felt right. I did have to call my mom and get permission. I did have to make my own arrangements for the open viewing because I was told it had to be when no one else was there, because everyone else in the family has so much conflict with me because I've
stood your ground.
Yeah. I still struggle with it because we were unreconciled. But it doesn't change the reality of it.
We need to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll hear more from pro-capital punishment protester Rick Lottie and death penalty abolitionist Reverend Tim Holton. This is Nashville. I'm Tasha A.F. Lemley, and this is Nashville. Before the break, we were listening to two men, very literally from different sides of a fence. Rick Lottie has stood on the for side during nearly a dozen recent Tennessee executions. Death penalty abolitionist Reverend Tim Holton has been on the against side, holding vigil in opposition to capital punishment. Today, they're sitting down for the first time, and we've just heard them connect over the intimate details of their childhood. You guys have some really exceptional similarities, and that same strength and that same determination has led you in somewhat of a divergent path when it comes to victims of crimes and perpetrators of crimes. I mean, there's so much overlapping.
The issues that I have with the death penalty are the fear that we get it wrong sometimes.
Amen.
It's racially motivated. It's arbitrarily applied, and then it's never worked.
It's screwed.
Because there will be murders committed today, even though we're executing people. I am absolutely someone who believes that grace requires accountability. I am absolutely pro accountability. And, for my cousin Daryl, I in no way support what he did. Life in prison, for me, would have been better. And it would have been better because it would have been over. Whereas all of the legal appeals, all of the Supreme Court decisions, all of the things, he had 5 execution dates before he was executed. I remember the very first one specifically because I had a nervous breakdown over it. And then when the next date came because he got a stay, I had that same experience, and it was like a loan. All the interest that I had accrued, I had to pay it again and again and again and again. And I personally, I support the appeals process because it's irreversible. I mean, if someone's, life in prison, evidence comes, it proves their innocence. The time that they've lost in jail or prison is gone. However, we can set them free. If they've been executed, it's over. And the last time the statistics were updated was the year 2020. Our exoneration rate from death row is for every 8 people we have executed since we reinstituted the death penalty at a federal level in the 70s. For every 8, 1 is exonerated. That's insane. 1 out of 8 is actually innocent. And these aren't intellectual disability claims. These aren't 8th Amendment claims. These are, DNA evidence has surfaced. Or, take Roberts that's out of Texas right now. They claim his daughter died from shaken baby syndrome, and he showed no remorse in the trial. Well, now we know shaken baby syndrome is not a thing.
Amen.
It's junk science. And now we know that his daughter actually died from an infection and a medical error. So there's no crime. And the reason that he didn't show emotion and the jury went nuts over his lack of remorse, he's autistic. He doesn't show emotion.
This is Nashville, and I'm Tasha A.F. Lemley. And if you're just tuning in, our guests this hour are largely interviewing each other as we listen in. Rick Lottie and Reverend Tim Holton. These are 2 people who are literally on opposite sides of the fence when the state is executing someone. And today, they're connecting over shared experiences, questions, and hopes. Let's keep listening.
This whole thing about the death penalty is complex, okay? Mm-hmm. Agreed? It's a pissing contest. and it's something that y'all ain't going to let me say. The big dogs, I mean, there are people bigger than us. It's a pissing contest. It has nothing to do with the Bible. Put the Bible to the side, because there are some people. Have you ever met somebody that does not believe in God? No matter how hard you try, you cannot make them believe that there is a God. Because I have met people like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've lost friends through a car accident and cancer. No matter what I said, I could never, ever convince them.
Yeah.
There is a God.
Yeah,
I
no, I know.
it.
Do you know why
No.
the people I know? Do you know why the people that I know that do not believe in God? Every single one of them have been harmed deeply by the church or by people claiming to be Christians.
Amen.
I was atheist for a while because the God that I was told was God growing up, the God that, did all of these things to me either because I needed to be prepared for something else or I'm being punished for something because, prosperity gospel, it was the law of the land. So that is not the God I wanted to have anything to do with. So when I left home as a teenager, I left God there. But God didn't leave me. And it took a long time, to get that through my stubborn head and to actually see it, that God was nothing that I had been taught. God is love. God is grace. God is mercy. God is forgiveness. God is judgment. God is guidance. God is all of these things. And I had to say, okay, I'm listening. Okay. Had I not gone through losing 4 cousins and then losing a cousin, their father, to the death penalty, I don't know if I would be a chaplain to death row or not. I was raised that the death penalty is the right thing, that it's an eye for an eye. Now, I have now since, through education, discernment, learning how to responsibly handle Holy Scriptures, that an eye for an eye actually brings things to a more fair and balanced place, and it has nothing to do with that. And the death penalty, it comes all the way from Leviticus, where all the sins of the people would be
written by Moses.
Well, no.
So some say.
No, because he writes about his own funeral in there, and you can't do that. So, no, not so much. That's on record. Trying to, do some good work.
Amen.
No, it's the priest would put all of the sins on the head of a goat and send that goat out into the wilderness to die, which is where we get the term scapegoat. That's and even, in back in the, 18th, 19th centuries, 20th century even, schools, churches, everybody turned out for these public, hangings.
They got dangerous in Nashville. That's why they banned them.
Yeah.
A lot of people are getting injured trying to get a good seat.
Yeah.
Here in Nashville.
Yeah. But they would go out and they, everybody in their mind, when I talk about it, they're like, yeah, they were there cheering it on. No, they were there in solidarity because they followed that, that Levite statute that their sins were being placed on the head of this person and they were the sacrificial lamb. And it's now been propelled into something that, like I say, we were told this is justice. This is going to make it better. This will bring healing. It did none of those things. It did none of those things. My father died grieving that he never reconciled with Daryl. At one point in their life, they were like brothers. It took a long time. I started trying to do some advocacy work, something, and it took several years before I could emotionally handle it. It was too hard. I was a nurse for 20 years before I became a pastor, and I just felt pulled to death row. And the path kind of went from all crooked and bendy to there was a straight path in. And I just followed it terrified. I had no idea really what I was getting myself into.
You didn't know what you were getting into. What have you found?
I found that
There's a lot of despair, I'm sure. On
hurt.
their part.
Yeah, so specifically on death row is what, okay, yes. What I have found people like you and me. I have found people that have lived through unspeakable, unbelievable things.
We have to take one last short break. When we come back, we'll finish out our hour with pro-execution demonstrator Rick Lottie and death penalty abolitionist Reverend Tim Holton. This is Nashville. I'm Tasha A.F. Lemley, and this is Nashville. This hour, we're listening to two men interview each other. Rick Lottie is known for standing outside of Riverbend Prison during executions, on the pro-execution side, while Reverend Tim Holton is a death row chaplain. I want to point out one of the things you won't get to hear in the time we have for this episode. Rick is like an encyclopedia when it comes to victims of Tennessee crimes and the people who committed the murders. In the full 3-hour conversation with Reverend Holton, over and over again, Rick would stop, mention a convicted person by name, and give intense details of their crime and what the victim endured. I bring this up because it's a striking amount of knowledge at hand. Specifically, Rick Lottie absolutely detests violence against children and says he resents the media for giving more attention to perpetrators than victims. It's much of the reason he speaks out and shows up at executions, in the cowboy hat with a rattlesnake on it I mentioned at the top of the show. So he's about to give us some insight into that wardrobe choice. Here's Rick.
Do you know the meaning of my snake on the top of my head?
No, I'd love to know.
I would too, yeah.
Back in the day, if somebody was accused of something, they were to hold a venomous snake in their hands.
Mm-hmm.
And the person would pick up that venomous snake, and whenever they're ready, raise it over their head. If the snake bit you, you were guilty.
Yeah.
If it didn't bite you, you're innocent. Put the snake down, and we're not going to talk about this allegation anymore.
Right.
See you at church.
Right.
Wrong or right. That's the way they used to do it way back then.
Yeah, which also harkens back to that Pentateuch, that Torah, those first 5 books of the Old Testament. It's we can't get ourselves past it.
In the commission of a felony, there's 95 counties in Tennessee. It depends on which county that you commit that offense in. There are some counties that where the district attorney will say, nope, I don't care what you did.
Right.
We're not going to go there. And then you can wind up in another jurisdiction where he's going to say, back in the day around here when you stole that horse, we're going to hang you in front of everybody so everybody knows around here you steal a horse, we're going to hang you for it. Problem is, people still stole horses.
Yep.
Now, that's problem number one. Problem number two is, if you know anything about horses, back in the day and even today, if you don't tether your horse down correctly, and you turn your back and walk off, well, that horse might do the same thing.
Horses are bicycles that make poor decisions.
Yes.
I have had many of them. Do you want an expensive hobby? Get a horse.
Amen, everybody.
Get a horse.
Amen.
Get a walking horse. And get a gelding. They're the best.
Back in the day, we were talking about people that had been executed and they didn't do it. Being charged with horse theft was one of them.
Yeah.
If somebody's horse could walk off, wind up in possession of another person who doesn't know the horse is missing, Then when a horse gets found, the owner says, "You stole my horse." And then the other person says, "I didn't steal it. It walked off and came onto my property." And then there's a dispute of whether or not the horse was or was not stolen. It's a misunderstanding, okay? Then you really did have horse thieves and cattle rustlers.
Yeah.
Okay? But you could easily wind up on the end of a rope over a misunderstanding over a horse. We've come a long way from holding a snake to the Salem witch trials when it comes to these capital murder cases. I want to see proof. I want to see proof, not an allegation.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of give and take with the evolution of that sentence.
It's evolution for sure. And capital punishment is so complex. Like I was saying, the 95 counties, it depends on the district attorney in that county.
Yeah.
I had made a comment of it might not be a sentence that should be even handed down again. I was thinking more along the lines of it should be, it's should not even be asked for again. Everybody is responsible for their own actions, and everybody is accountable for their own actions. And if you have bloody thoughts about another person, understand this. You get charged and capital murder is on the table and so is the death penalty. Here's what you're looking at. But I just want for everybody to know, if you start having thoughts about looking at somebody's child and you start having some thoughts that violate the Tennessee Code Annotated, it's not illegal to have those thoughts. But once you cross that line, things that start off badly usually end badly.
If you're just getting here, this is Nashville, and I'm Tasha A.F. Lemley, and you're listening to a conversation between death row chaplain Reverend Tim Holton and pro-death penalty demonstrator Rick Lottie. They've been sharing with each other what drew them to their work, and they've been finding some common ground in unlikely places. We're going to go back to Tim, and he's about to mention one of the death row inmates he ministers to, and even identifies with, Donald Middlebrooks.
I can't tell you how many clergy peers, pastor peers have contacted me and condemned me to hell for the work that I do. Because, I'm told that you must support what they did. You know, you're just this bleeding heart liberal who just wants it to go away and everything to be fine. No, that's not it at all. I'm a huge Flannery O'Connor fan, and there's two quotes that really come to mind. First is that grace is not grace without accountability, and I believe that. Grace is free, but it's not cheap. The second is conviction without experience leads to harshness. I'd rather see the millions on top of millions that we pour into perpetuating this system better utilized in ways that could intervene in childhood trauma and prevent the things that lead to the people that commit these crimes, the things that propel them. Donald Middlebrooks, I'll use him as an example because I know he's okay with this. If you take his childhood and my childhood, the only thing different are the names. They are strikingly, eerily similar. And, you know, I don't want to play devil's advocate. I'm still going to play devil's advocate. If we're gonna draw a line and say, okay, this is our defining line. This is the demarcation of the worst of the worst. What snapshot do we use then to judge by? Because the man Donald Middlebrooks was when he took Eric's life is not who he is now. And I can say that because I have held Donald Middlebrooks when he has been absolutely inconsolable, because he prays to God every single day that somehow overnight he and his victim could swap places and his victim would be alive. That I have never in my life, as a pastor, as a nurse that's held the hand of thousands of dying people, my entire life has been dedicated to walking with people through the scariest parts of their lives. I have never felt remorse as deep from anyone else as I do Donald Middlebrooks. And that's not to say that what he did is okay. It's not. And he'll tell you it's not. He'll tell you it's absolutely not. He's not the same person. So many of them, they're not the same people. They're not. And I feel deeply convicted for not, like, if I were to disregard that, because to me that feels like saying God can only redeem some people, or that maybe God can only redeem me from my worst decision, but everybody else has to wallow in it, and everybody else is judged by it, and this is the permanent station that anyone else has to sit in. And that's really, that's the human condition right there. That's our brokenness is, I'm worth redemption. I'm worth mercy. I'm worth grace. But now somebody else did something worse than me, so they don't deserve all that. I do, but they don't. And opening ourselves up to allowing that grace to flow out and touch others, especially those that we deem the absolute least worthy. To me, that is the good news. That is the gospel. That is what propels me forward. And I get asked often, do I think Hitler's in heaven? I hope so, because I need God's love to be bigger than my hate. Now, the broken side of me, do I want him to be there? Not particularly, because I have been a good boy, and I need God to look at me and say, you've been a good boy. You deserve to be here. You've earned your place here. You've done the right things. This trash over here hasn't, so I'm going to excuse them. I need God to be bigger than that. I need God to be bigger than me. I need God to be bigger than the box that we put God in. And that box being, only some people are worthy, only some people deserve, only some people receive. I need God's love to just rip that box to shreds. And that's why I go. That's why I do. That's why I stand. That's why. And when I'm in that field at Riverbend, I'm not only there praying for the person in that room. I'm praying for their family, their loved ones. I'm praying for their victims, their victims' families, their victims' loved ones. I write the liturgies. That's the paper handout. I write those. And I make sure we say the names. I make sure that we're there as a group that comes together to pray and to love. Absolutely. And any vigil that I am a participant in will never be a protest.
This is almost like something, it's a war that nobody's going to win.
Yeah.
But what these families don't understand is you might be waiting 36 years for justice and accountability, which means you're going to be going to bed every night thinking about the loved ones that you've lost. And when you wake up, that's the first thing you're going to think of is the loved ones that you've lost for 36 years. That's what you're going to be thinking every time you go to bed and every time you wake up.
Yeah.
Compared to, okay, it went to trial.
Yeah.
And he got sent to prison. And that is called justice and accountability.
Right. Right. You get the healing gets to begin. It really does. And I stopped by the store on the way down this morning. I wanted a drink for the road. And I had on, this my chaplain shirt. And the lady behind the counter, she said, what kind of chaplain are you? I said, I'm a Methodist pastor and, chaplain to prison. And I usually just say I'm just a prison chaplain. I don't go any further than that. And she said, I lost my son 3 years ago to murder, and his murderer was just sentenced. And she said, I used to think I wanted the death penalty, but he was sentenced to life. And I woke up the next day and it was better. And now she's glad that the death penalty wasn't an option. Consistently, it's the realization that when retribution turns cold, it's its own form of torment. And I've seen that in my family too.
There was a lot of blood shed, a lot of lost life, a lot of heartbreak.
Yeah.
To ensure someone like you, and that's the first thing that is protected. The First Amendment talks about religion.
Yep.
Nobody's screw with you about how you believe.
Right. It's a big deal to me that you get to believe the way you want to believe.
Amen.
And it's up to me if I'm willing to sit down at a table and create space that is safe enough for you to be who you are and believe who you are. And it's my job to make sure you know that you can be you. So I will go to the ends of the earth to make sure that you can stand on the other side of that fence and express yourself however you feel you need to express yourself, because that's what's right for you.
Look, I don't want to stand on my side of the fence any more than you want to stand on your side of the fence.
Yeah.
Why are we standing in that field?
Yeah.
The reason we were standing there is because somebody committed a heinous, premeditated, first-degree murder in the commission of a felony.
Mm-hmm.
That is what we have to solve. How do we keep that from happening from now on? Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Are you a hugger? I'm a hugger.
Thanks for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced and directed by me. The board operator was our host, Blake Farmer. Today's music, courtesy of Moby Gratis. Listen back at thisisnashville.org or your podcasting app. You can comment and tell us what you want to hear on the show by leaving us a message at 615-751-2500 or find us on socials at This Is Nashville. I'm Tasha A.F. Lemley, and this is Nashville. We love you. Keep going, you guys.